Here to get a read on all of that, former Utah Governor Jon Huntsman, Jr., former presidential candidate as well, ambassador to China et al. Governor, very good to have you.
Thanks, Neil. What a pleasure to be with you, my friend.
Same here. You know, one of the things that you had argued about is to stop the arguing and to try to get stuff done. But it is very tempting, right, when a party has full control of the legislative branches and then the executive branch to do whatever they want to do. We learn from Democrats, as we have from Republicans, that it can come back to bite you. So how does a Donald Trump avoid that with pieces of legislation or you name it?
Well, you just reprised the history of 8 years ago, and you might think I'm smoking something they just made legal out in Colorado, but let me tell you this, Neil. I'm actually a real optimist when it comes to some bipartisan wins early in the administration, because I think you have the convergence of some very important things here. So my party, the Republican Party, has pretty much been devoid of a lot of content in recent years. That's been taken care of. You've got a new president-elect, Donald Trump, who has some ideas. And moreover, he's a classic deal maker. You had in President Obama somebody who didn't want to engage directly with Congress, so nothing got done. And we languished after health care reform for the most part. And that was a straight party line vote. So if you look at it this way, this is the first time since the 1920s, Neil, that Republicans pretty much control everything. I suspect they're going to want to be smart about learning some lessons early on that allow them to get some bipartisan wins, building new muscle mass so that you can actually make the machinery of legislation begin to work. And the good news beyond what I've just told you is I think in what I'm picking up from the president-elect's office, you've got some content around which you can build some bipartisan
Where specifically? Because it isn't on tax cuts. I mean, a lot of Democrats say that's a non-starter.
Well,
it might be a moot point, but I mean,
I think so.
What do you think?
So let's take off the things that probably aren't going to have a lot of bipartisan cooperation. Supreme Court nominee, probably not. Immigration reform, probably not. But tax reform when coupled with infrastructure. So as governor of the great state of Utah, we did a lot of tax reform, historically so. You couldn't do it on a standalone basis. It had to be tied to something that the opposition party wanted. So you can see a deal emerging between
what did you do
tax
to
reform
get that
and infrastructure.
Opposition party wanted? Did you raise taxes
you got to
somewhere?
roll up your sleeves, and you got to cut a deal that gives them something they want. You're never going to walk away with 100% of what you start with.
But what did you do in Utah?
Well, we created a flat tax. We created a flat tax. And, you know, there's a lot more that went to it. So I think tax reform and infrastructure is one big basket of possibilities. I think health care reform, as tricky and sensitive as that is, Neil, I think is another area of possibility for bipartisan cooperation. So jettisoning Obamacare, which will be done, has to be coupled with, okay, now what? You got to build it up into something.
Right.
And I think it's the building up part that I suspect you can find some bipartisan convergence on. You have to, or else you're going to have a replay of 8 years ago. And I think we're too smart now, having lived that history.
But here's where I think that a deal maker like Donald Trump differs from that traditional Washington deal making. I don't know whether it's a good or bad thing, Governor, but hear me out. That he might recognize and keep people who are up for, you know, election in 2 years from now. Quite a few, I think 24 Democrats are. In order to sort of peel off their support, much as Ronald Reagan did, things would be done to help them out in their states or in their districts, sort of one by one, rather than making a deal that would appeal to a broad swath of Democrats that would be an anathema to Republicans, so he doesn't have to water down anything. Some goodies, business deals, if you will, that will keep them in the fold and maybe help them with their own elections 2 years out. And there's Donald Trump to say, I can help you from Armageddon.
Well, listen, he comes from the business deal-making world. I've lived in that world. I've lived in the political deal-making world. I suspect that being the pragmatic deal-maker that he is, he's going to find some Democratic convergence. You pick up somebody like a Joe Manchin, who might bring 5 or 6 people with him. You sit down and you talk about how you can build up a replacement for Obamacare. You talk about exactly what Trump's been talking about.
Get him to switch parties.
Well, he's a good man, and who knows where he is right now. But President-elect Trump has been talking about how you expand and make more competitive the insurance sector. So let's just take that as one key area that is going to be critical to reform because it carries with it so much of the cost around health care. You've got to get that right in order to get everything else right. And now it's locked up state by state. They're not affordable, they're not portable, they're not accessible. It's ripe for the kind of reform that you could build a bipartisan coalition around. The populations that have to be covered, broadening and expanding insurance possibilities from just the catastrophic that are very expensive and accessible for students and the young immortals through to the Cadillac versions that have all the bells and whistles. We're nowhere near the marketplace that needs to be created for that. And I'm excited about the possibilities. I think there's enormous progress that can be made in an area that is 20% of our nation's GDP, let's face it.
Well, the big thing's going to happen. The irony will be, and you might be right, just as it took Nixon to make overtures to China.
There you go.
It could take of all people, Donald Trump, a man who was ripped apart in the press during the campaign for being the ultimate deal maker.
There.
I see.
That's right. Just when you think it's not possible.
All right, Governor, we shall see. Governor Jon Huntsman, Jr.
Thanks, Dale.
Always good having you on.